Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for Facebook Live. Coach Rick here with my colleague Nancy, and joining us tonight, we've got Gina, O'Sheen, and Shane. Hi, guys.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Hello.
Good to see you all tonight. I'm going to jump right into it because we have a lot to cover, as we've talked about. To set up the discussion, our Facebook Live events, as many of you who are watching, you're regulars, you know, they often involve guests who share their successes in the program. And you may have caught the episode a couple weeks ago. It was our 1-year anniversary event where we invited several previous guests to join us. And guys, that was a fun episode, isn't it?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
It was tremendous.
Great.
Yeah, it was fun and hopefully inspiring and motivating for people. And I think that was the general feedback that we got. However, as positive as these events often are, we did get some great feedback from a few of our community members about how easy it can be to actually feel less successful about how things are going for you in the program in comparison to these amazing stories that we sort of showcase on the Facebook Live. Gina, say a little bit more about what we heard about that. We appreciated this feedback so much.
Yeah, definitely. So on Friday morning, right after the event, I had a phase 2 class. And as people were getting onto the Zoom, they were talking about it. And they were saying things that like they were so inspired and the stories were so amazing. And, you know, just how happy they were for people's success. I mean, it was just such a great event. And then toward the end of that, as we were getting started for class, a couple people raised their hand and said, you know, I don't mean to be the Debbie Downer. And I really am happy for those folks. And it was wonderfully inspiring. But, you know, I'm really struggling right now. And so watching all of that kind of made me feel like, well, what's wrong with me that I can't find that kind of success? And so I really acknowledged her feelings. And I said, that's amazing feedback. And I'll definitely send it back to our team, which I did. And here we are. So I think it'll be a good event.
Yeah, understandable response, O'Sheen, don't you think?
I think so. I think since the beginning, in my involvement with the community, I keep telling everybody we're all in this together. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason for that, because our successes are together. We've all had failures, and that's together. It's all a part of the process. So I'm so excited to delve into this a little bit tonight, because I feel like it'll be very practical, very pragmatic in nature. So very, very excited to talk about this topic, because it's an important thing to discuss.
I think we all are excited about it. Certainly, if you could gauge from the discussion we had earlier this week about it. You know, Shane, when I shared this feedback that we had heard, you went ahead and posted a comment that was like really in the center of that whole point. You got an amazing response. Take a minute and just tell us about like what fueled you to take the time to write that comment and what that was like.
After you had shared that with me, I really kind of digested that and took some time and thought about it. And, you know, first and foremost, we never want somebody to feel like that their journey is the same as anybody else's. You know, we're each on an individual path, first of all. We're on the same path to better health, and we're using the same tools, HMR, to get there. But, you know, it really struck me that, you know, there are a lot of folks out there who are struggling. And, you know, the success stories that we've done, and I've been on here several times, O'Sheen's been on here several times, you know, we can go on and on with the names, but, you know, we like to highlight the successes because, you know, that's kind of what we're all aiming for is long-term health. But, you know, one thing that we hadn't discussed really before was some of the struggles to get there. So, you know, like O'Sheen said, we're all in this together, and I wanted to lay it out there. And I titled it, Keeping It Real. Mm-hmm. You know, that was the title of my post. And I so appreciate the community support, the love that was poured out, the comments, the likes. You know, people said they really needed to hear that, especially that day. They were having a rough day. And to know that I was laying it out there that I had struggled as well.
Yes.
It made them feel the same.
Just to put a finer point on it, Shane, in terms of did your post resonate where you were saying, hey, it's not always roses for me. Nancy and I had some fun looking at, there were quite a few posts.
Yeah, the comments, it blew up.
So many of them were in the vein. I'll just read a few, you know, so many thank yous for sharing what you did, Shane. I needed to hear this. Another person, I needed that. Maria D, I needed to read this. Thank you for writing this post. It must have been really validating, Shane, for you to have read that after you kind of put yourself out there and say, hey, I'm not perfect. Sometimes things don't go well for me either. Nancy, you had a couple that you really liked.
Yeah.
Want to just take us through those?
Yes, one from Lynn. I totally needed to see this today, making it real for us. I've been struggling with my mess ups. I know it's a life change, and I am learning, as with any change, it's not easy. And then she says, progress, not perfection. Thank you so much.
Yes.
And then another was like, she really got it. And then the other one was Melissa. I thought this was really amazing too. And this is useful to hear. So thank you so much for your post. This is exactly what I needed. I've lost over 90 pounds in a year and a half. Sounds really successful, right? And I recently had many ups and downs.
Mm.
You are completely right about struggling from time to time. I think some of us mistakenly think that once we've lost the weight, we're no longer going to struggle with food, but we are. Keep going, everyone. So those I thought really,
Awesome.
Really
great.
good. And just a quick shout out to Pam, former guest. We'll get you back on here, Pam, soon enough. Also, it's a fight every day, but you know, Pam has been wildly successful, but everyone has their ups and downs. Shane, if in case there's any question about whether or not you should have made that post, I'll just read one last quote, just the beginning of it. In response to your words, my friend, no truer words were ever written. That's what Laura wrote. That is quite a compliment. There have been quite a few words written throughout history. So Shane, you should feel very encouraged by that.
Good company, definitely. Good company.
All right, let's, so knowing that we were going to talk about, so let's talk about when things don't go so well, because it happens. And so we got together, several of the health coaches got together, and then this group right here got together. And I think there were sort of two things that should have jumped out in conclusion from those discussions. The first was every one of us could relate to this whole experience of when things aren't going well. So boy, are we happy that people pointed us in this direction, to use your words, Shane. You know, let's get real. This is reality-based thinking. This happens. The other thing that came up was we came up with 3 specific perspectives, empowering perspectives, if we can even say that we felt were very important to keep in mind as you continue with this journey of lifestyle change. Each of these are distinct. There is some overlap between them. We're going to take our time and go through the 3. There are more than 3 out there, but these were the 3 that we all agreed made a lot of sense for us to talk about tonight. So pick the ones that resonate most with you. And also to our audience, please take a moment and share any of your experiences as we go through these perspectives, or any perspective you yourself have found helpful when things aren't going so well. Let's cast the net wide here as we have this conversation. So guys, who do we have joining us? I know that I know my sister's on, so let me give a
Yes, she
shout out
certainly is.
Leanie Babes. Great to have you here, honey. Awesome. Thank you for being with us. Who else do we have, guys?
I got my whole family on. I got my mom, my brother, my father. I got all of HMR Natick on. Yeah, the whole clan.
Yep.
We
A lot
got
of
some
HMR Native
milestone
folks.
folks on here too.
We've got your brother Bill on as well. We've got
Billy boy.
You know, we got a lot of our regulars on. We've got Susan. We've got Sherry. We've got Cheryl, a former HMR employee. Well, Cheryl, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Excellent. All right, Cheryl.
We've
Great.
got John. We've got David. We've got Sue Lopez from HMR. We have Mary. Oh, she's from Natick. We have Lori here from Central Wisconsin. She's often
Hey,
joined us.
everybody. Welcome.
Wow.
Hey,
We also have some new people on, someone who's, I think, on day 2, very excited to be here.
Excellent.
well,
Great.
guys, I have to give a shout out real quick to one of my people in my class, Bridget. She got her 25-pound pin,
Hey,
25-pound lost pin. So
Awesome.
way to go,
Right, Bridget.
Kudos to you, Bridget.
Great commitment.
Awesome.
Way to
And
go.
Bob's here.
Yep.
All right.
Bob from,
Bob, no idea.
And
Oh, Cucamonga.
Cucamonga.
he's from the Inland Empire tonight. He's making it
wonder-
easy for us.
I want to go visit Bob and just get a tour of this place.
I
feel
know.
like it's really a destination spot, the way we showcase it here. Bob, good to have you with us as always every week. So let's get into it, guys. You ready? Nance, why don't you start prepping the PowerPoint here? So
Yeah.
we're going to put a little bit of a visual to this here. The first perspective, and we tried to sort of create some sense of chronology to these. This first one is a broad perspective. And actually, Lynn, if you're watching, you, in response to Shane's post, you actually said these very words, but boy, no truer words were ever spoken. The goal is progress, not perfection. Guys, more reality-based thinking. Isn't it? It's just so easy to fall into the trap of shooting for perfection when you're thinking about your weight, when you're thinking about the lifestyle changes that you're trying to make and whatnot. Can we just talk for a minute about how easy it is to fall into that trap and also some of the problems that come along with it? Who wants to start us off here?
Sure. I mean, I know for me, Rick, like when I first started, I felt a sense of like being overwhelmed, right? Like you go your whole life without having all the right answers, and then you're like get into quote unquote diet mode, and I'm gonna do all the right things all at once right now. And that's a very good way to get overwhelmed. So I think that people fall into that because you have good intentions, but it's okay to build off of little successes one at a time incrementally. Like everyone tells me, you lost quote unquote weight very, very quickly, but I've done that before, right? So that doesn't always necessarily mean that's the long-term success. And I know that when I first started with HMR, it was, I qualify it or quantify it as like perfectly imperfect. Yes, I did the shakes and I stayed in the box and I was consistent with that, but I wasn't keeping my records. Gina will be the first to tell everybody. I definitely was not doing PA right away. These were skills that I was able to build on and gain momentum as I did. So I think that the illusion of perfection or jumping right into perfection is in many ways a trap. And I don't know if Shane felt that as well, but I know I did. So
Shane?
Well, it was, journaling for one was a huge thing in the beginning. I wasn't used to doing that. Wasn't even used to really thinking about the food, and now I'm thinking about it and I'm journaling it and I'm keeping records and, those are some big steps, especially when you throw in, water and PA and all of those new things. And, I, a little bit different perspective, I guess, but I wanted the HMR program to prove itself to me, you know, because I wasn't able to do the PA at the time. So I said, okay, I'm going to give this thing a month and I'm going to do it like Chuck told me to do it. Chuck told me to do, stay in the box and you'll have good results. So I did it and I had good results, but I had to take a little bit of action to get that to start happening. But yeah, I mean, no, it wasn't perfect in the beginning. They had to help me fine tune my recording of what I was eating. And okay, this is an actual serving, and we talked about some condiments and different things. But no, I mean, it was a whole new world. And, just like Oshin, I had lost weight before too with other programs. And so, it's not just I've done HMR and I've won. It's not that. This has been a lifetime struggle with weight, and it's not going to stop. It's
Right.
it's an ongoing thing.
That's right. And there are our theme here. There are times when things aren't going as well as you'd like. So again, we've put up this first perspective for, there's more to say here. The goal is progress, not perfection. So Gina or Nancy, what else is there to say about this perspective? Because there's a lot of freedom in this when you really can get it, internalize this point. Gina, what would you say?
I think that it's in the progress, in the practice that you learn. And I think if you're setting yourself up for the standard of perfectionism, there's no room to learn because you're not letting yourself take a step where you might fall or fail, but then you learn from that. And so I think you lose that if you're setting yourself up for this ideal of I have to be perfect, where there's only one way to do it. And so that's sort of what comes to mind for me is you lose the learning. in
Yeah.
that perfectionism. So
Yeah, I always think I should be able to do this. I should be able to do that. And when you can't, like it's so important to be able to like, all right, here's where I am right now. What can I do to progress? I think that's to have that perspective and just not compare yourself to other people.
Yep.
And just
Yep.
be able to go at your own pace. And then the other thing I thought of that I did want to mention, and I don't know if this relates to anybody else, but perfection can prevent me from doing things. Does this sound familiar? Like, I don't want to take a Zumba class because I don't want to look like an idiot. You know what I mean? So I'll be true. Like I'm like, okay, if I'm not good at something, I'll hesitate to do it sometimes, which limits me. It's not good because I'm afraid of maybe how I'll look, or I won't do well, and then so that's another thing that can actually be impacted here.
Yeah, Nancy, the plan that you, as my coach, pushed me to do over this past weekend, where I got away for some tennis with my brothers, isn't that a perfect example of that?
Yeah.
Going into that, I like to get more than 50 servings of fruits and vegetables per week. So that's 7 or more every single day on average. Like, to me, that's perfection. And what did you do? What plan did you have me take on while I was going to be completely out of my environment?
Yeah. So I said, so Rick, how about you go with the goal that I will figure out 5 veggie fruits every day. And he said, yeah.
And that just made it so much more doable. And I ended up having, as you know, a fantastic week where I met the more than 50.
Yeah.
So I was not trying to be perfect, but I was really trying to, work with what I had. So Nancy, one other quickie, you just said, don't compare yourself to other people. I'm not sure this is necessarily a news flash. People do all the time, but think about other people. Nobody is perfect.
Right.
Nobody is perfect. And here we are saying, gee, disappointed because I'm not doing this perfectly. Let me say it another way. 100% of people slip up. 100% of people, no matter what it looks like on the outside, they slip up at some point. So don't compare yourself to other people, and certainly don't compare yourself to perfection, because perfection, certainly in the long run, it just doesn't exist.
You have to forgive me for the analogy, but playing golf, it's so easy to just like get so mad at yourself because you're not hitting a good shot, and like, what's wrong with me, and I can't do that. And then I always have to stop and think about even the pros, with all of the hours they practice, they miss shots. Right? So it's like, come on, get some perspective here.
Yeah. So let's go one level deeper now. So if the goal is progress, not perfection, and catch yourself when you have an unrealistic expectation like that. A little deeper now, let's just acknowledge how easy it is to beat yourself up, how easy it is to be hard on yourself. So Gina, what would you say about that?
I always tell people that when you're beating yourself up and all that sort of negative internal dialogue, would you say that to someone you love? Would you call them, you're such an idiot, or why are you doing that, and you fool, or whatever? You wouldn't talk to others the way that we speak to ourselves. And so I think we have to honor that a little bit and remember that.
Yeah.
So,
In fact, I think you said when we spoke on Monday, or maybe I said it, one of us said it, the idea of, think of a child you love.
Yes.
Who was beating, like a child, an innocent child who was beating themselves up the exact same way you're beating yourself up. What would you say to that child?
Exactly. Yeah.
Boy.
You would say, you'd let them off the hook. You'd say, it's going to be okay. You can do this. All the things that we should say to ourselves, but we never do.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And you think that goes away, Rick, at every stage? Like, you think that eventually you have enough wins that goes away, but if you're not watchful of it or mindful of it, it creeps up at every stage. What I tell, a fun story that I love telling everybody in my native class, and I've told Gina, I've dubbed it the night the broccoli won. And it was literally, it was a week into phase 2. Now let's talk wins, right? I've been on phase 1 at this point for a year. I've lost 219 pounds, and I'm 1 week into phase 2. And I had my meal plan at this point with Gina, and it involved measuring vegetables, right? I've never meal prepped in my life in all 35 years at this point. I've never cared this much about food or measuring food out or prepping it or just being ready for my week. and I found myself with Ziplocs everywhere on my kitchen counter. It's like 8:30 at night. I didn't think it through. I bought gigantic bags of broccoli instead of pre-portioned out ones that, so because it's the first time doing something, you make mistakes that seem silly now, right?
Yes.
And I'm sitting there not thinking about the weight I had lost, not thinking about being 100% in the box, not thinking about the fact that I was doing PA for an hour and a half to, like doing serious amount of PA that I've never done in my life. All I was thinking about right then and there was how stupid can you be that you really are frustrated trying to measure out. And I called Gina the next day, and I was like, Gina, I'm going crazy. I don't know if if a cup of broccoli is a cup of broccoli, it doesn't match up with the and she was like, I need you to slow down for
Take
1
a breath.
second, right? So no matter how many wins you have,
Yeah.
broccoli even can take you under, so
Yeah.
you just got to learn to spot it and know what's happening,
It also shows how unrealistic this whole perfection and I'm going to be really good at this. I should be really good at this.
Good. Yeah.
These are behaviors you've never done before. Broccoli will win.
Yeah.
That's such a great story.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, go ahead, Shane. Go ahead.
No, I just saw a comment from Bob Garrison. I think this kind of, a lot of us resonate with this. I have 50 years of bad eating habits that's not going to correct itself overnight. I think that fits right in here. It just, we've lived the way we lived for so long in the food culture, and these new habits take a little time to take root sometimes.
Yeah.
So Bob, I mean, that's the perfect point.
For sure.
There was another comment. Nancy, maybe you could pull up Dave's email.
Yep.
It was very rich. We'll just read the first paragraph here, but it really, he shared his thoughts on perfection. So for those of you who don't know, Dave has lost in excess of, O'Shane,
300 pounds.
That's right.
Awesome.
Incredible. So just slow it down here for a minute. I'll read it really quickly. So what do you do when you have a week where you don't lose anything, or you even gain a pound back, even though you stayed in the box and did everything right? It happens. It can be debilitating emotionally if you let it be. But know this, it has and does happen. If it hasn't happened for you yet, it will. Your body doesn't know that it's weigh-in day. It doesn't know that you've done it, that you'd rather it not retain extra fluid and thus a few pounds due to that sinus infection or cold that you have. And what about the new medication that you had to take for whatever reason? Yep, some of them can cause weight gain too, but it's temporary as long as you stick to it and stay in the box. So what was a useful message in this email? Because, Dave, you look at him from the outside, who's more successful than Dave, having lost over 300 pounds? Shane, comments about what you took out of that little post of his?
No, it's just, he has come so far, but life happens sometimes, right? And part of the keeping it real, medications play into it, how you feel plays into it. We all go through cycles every month. Every one of us do. And it's not always going to be 100%, right?
Yep, absolutely.
The moon causes different things in some people. It's just,
Hey, I called him Dave, and David, Erickson wrote, "Amen. That Dave guy is smart."
Smiley face. I was just gonna, you brought it. I was gonna do that.
Yeah.
Good one, David.
I love it.
He is smart. I know for him, it's definitely one day at a time. He's always focused on process and incremental steps. I know for me, the day I had met him, it just happened. Everything happens for a reason. I was like 9 months into shakes only. And I was like, gosh, it was just a day where you doubt yourself. How much longer can I do this? I want to go to goal weight. I want to do this. And then I just happened to be on the community page, and I saw a gentleman that is 300 pounds in phase one.
Mhm.
Just, we're all here to motivate each other, and the success stories motivate as much as the struggles motivate, because we all struggle.
As Joy just said, to that point, O'Shane, it is incredibly inspiring to hear from O'Shane and Shane. So yes, the success stories are important. They're aspirational and they let you know what's possible. But also, as we're talking here, there are times when things don't go so well. And that's why we are talking about that. Quick hello to Jennifer, our steady Jennifer M. And also Susan from my group on Tuesday. Susan, awesome. So glad to have you here joining us. It's great.
I also started to not to give up. to stick with it and to tolerate the feelings and the difficulty so that you can stay with it. I heard that. And that could relate to, if you are in the box and you have a blip on the scale, or if you're struggling to be in the box and you're having feelings associated with that. Either way, stick with it. Don't give up. Stay in
Gina,
it.
that's such an important thing you just said there. Tolerate the feelings.
Yeah.
That's easy to say, but it's not so easy to do, is it?
No, it definitely takes time and practice.
That is a skill.
It-
And,
it-
it's one thing, it's hard. Dave's example is hard where he was in the box and the scale went up, but it's even harder to get on that scale when you've had a lost weekend, you know what I mean? Or you've overeaten, you've gained weight, and it's really hard to get on that scale.
Right.
But the benefit of it is you're staying in the game. You're much more likely to turn it around and much more quickly if you can tolerate getting on and looking at it and then, figuring out next steps. So that is a real skill, but it's an important one.
Nancy, on the face of it, people hearing you say that, if you're not with an HMR mindset, it almost doesn't make sense.
Right.
Tolerating my feelings. That's a very cognitive thing. That's a
Yeah.
skill. Isn't a skill something like swinging a golf club or a tennis racket? What do you mean it's a skill? Well, skills can be cognitive as well. It's something that you do enough that it becomes more of a habit, more familiar, more comfortable, more habitual. And the more you tolerate your feelings and continue to keep going forward, as you just said, Gina, the better you actually get at it. But you just have to keep doing it and get those reps in place.
It's
actually very
similar to what O'Sheen said, where he's going crazy over the broccoli, but what he's got to do is keep the perspective. I'm down 219 pounds. I'm not gaining all my weight back because I can't measure this broccoli right now. So no, it is a skill to be able to stop and think.
It is important, because if you don't know how to reset, one bad decision can turn into a week's worth of bad decisions and snowball. I've lost over 100 pounds a couple of times in my life before HMR, and I can pinpoint specific meals and specific days where it went south. And because you get so down on yourself, and because to Nancy's point, you don't come right back and you don't do what you did beforehand that got you successful, now it's snowballed and you're not going on the scale, you're not checking, you're not writing foods down, then you stop exercising, and before you know it, like me, if you're like me, 10 years goes by and you haven't been to the doctors. You're avoiding things because you just, one bad decision snowballs into many more. And looking back now, I'm like, gosh, I was so stupid. It was just one bad day, but I can remember the bad day.
Totally.
Yeah.
Can I read a couple of comments I think are pretty good? So Michelle is saying, this is encouraging, been living in a place of regret. Good to hear that others have been in the same place I am and have overcome. Really great to hear. Really great to hear. Sherry says, for me, my biggest success of this terrible year has been my commitment to being brutally honest about what I'm actually doing, eating and feeling, and I keep showing up. And it goes on.
That's so important, Sherry.
Yeah. So
Showing up.
Keep showing up.
By the way, my 4-year-old knows Sherry as Miss Sherry, so with a W, so she will forever be Miss Sherry.
So,
And, I will say, even if you've, like, as you said, O'Sheen, great example, Shane, you've had this situation too, where, if you do give up for a while and you do gain weight and whatever, it's still important to not make it a forever thing, right? It's, whenever, it's start back again. And of course, if you come to HMR, we're going to welcome you with open arms.
That's one of the things I really love about the program. And I periodically jump back into a phase 1 box just because, because I don't want to think about measuring proteins. I don't want to think about, each individual item I'm going to have. So that's one of the beautiful things about HMR is the phase 1 box. O'Sheen's is a little different than mine. He does shakes only. I did healthy solutions. So anytime that I feel like I need that, I can reset with the phase 1 box.
It's great. Not a punishment. It's a tool.
No, the first time I did it, I felt a little bit like, why can't I get this phase 2 stuff down? So I was a little down on myself. So there may be some folks that are struggling with that. In phase 2, you're having a little problem, but you know, you've got to measure those proteins. You've got to do certain things. You've got to watch your condiments. You know, I went on a PB2 tangent for a while, you know, and that really, it stalled me. PB2, who does that? This guy, that's who did it. You know, I was having too much, but phase one box was there to welcome me back. I didn't feel like a failure after a few days because it was working again, and that was part of the plan. It was one of the tools, like Rick just said, one of the tools I had at my disposal, and I was using it.
Great.
Well
Guys,
said.
let me recap for people who have joined and missed the first part of this. So we acknowledged up front that we like to really showcase success stories a lot in our Facebook Live events because they're inspirational and aspirational. But we also want to acknowledge, and that's the whole point of tonight's discussion, that there are times when things aren't going so well, and you may not feel like a success. You might feel like the opposite of it. So we're having some reality-based talk here about when that happens and important perspectives to keep in mind. And the first one that we just presented was the goal is progress, not perfection. The natural tendency is to beat yourself up. Everyone does it. Catch yourself when you do that. Let it go. Practice some self-kindness when you're doing that. And then the other point, let's make sure we come back to this, guys, the idea of tolerating unmet expectations, tolerating feelings. It may feel impossible, but the more you tolerate things and keep going forward, the better you actually get at tolerating the discomfort and moving forward. You actually can get more comfortable with being uncomfortable, but it doesn't happen without practice.
Mhm.
So tolerating expectations. Let's summarize this one with a real quick example. Nancy, if you could pull up the PowerPoint. This is a client success story. It's a little interactive. So if you're watching here, really pay attention to this. Here we have a success story. So you have someone at their start weight, point X, and then you can make up how much this person's down. Let's say really impressive. Make up the number in your mind. We don't even have to say it here. Y. If you look at that, just look at that real quick. Oshin, what's your comment when you see this? Boy, the guy was at X or she was at X and then she was at Y over a certain amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's glorious, right? It just looks very, very easy, very quick even. There's no timetable there, but you assume it's quick because we assume everybody does things a lot better than we do ourselves, right? You know,
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, like this person's a machine,
Yeah.
right? This
Yeah.
person's perfect. Okay, now let me take you through the reality of this success. And what you'll see now is so common. We see it all the time. Haven't we seen this, Gina and Nancy, in our almost 100 collective years doing this work?
Literally.
Time and time again. Nancy, show us what this path actually might have looked like. Okay, so here we go. Some weight loss up front. Well, it certainly started well, but how many people out there, or you guys have had that experience where, oh, wait a minute, my weight loss is slowing down. What's going on here? So Shane, how easy can it be in these moments to want to give up?
Oh, it's frustrating. You've had such great success in the very beginning. You know, the scale is your friend, and then you come up to a week, and it's like, what? You know, I was in the box, I was focused. What happened? You know, what was different this week? Why am I plateauing? And
Yeah.
it can be demoralizing and frustrating.
Yeah.
Certainly. Why keep going, Oshin or Shane?
For me, it's a baseline, Rick. Like I what kept me going whenever my weight plateaued many times. Eating the same things, the same shakes. You know, it was mind-boggling at certain points. Like, looking back, it could have been too much water, too little water. You know, variances in it could have been anything, right? But for me, if you have a good baseline of like this, the simplest things that you set out to do right, as that's my goal. Like, so on the weeks that I would plateau, and it would be weeks sometimes, I would just go to Gina and be like, Gina, my only goal these next couple of weeks while this rides out is just to keep staying in the box. Like, I'm not looking at anything else. Everything else can go on one side view. That's the only bucket I care about right now. And as a baseline, it helps because it's focusing on what you can control, not what you can't control.
Lot to tolerate here. Comes back to that here. So let's say if you really are embracing progress, not perfection, let me stay in action. Let's say this person gets back on a weight loss mode. Nancy, if you could build it, but then something even worse happens. Look at this, some weight loss, and then, my goodness, weight gain. how compelling are those internal conversations about, oh, this is just not working. I think I want to give up. Gina, go ahead.
Yeah, here we go again.
There we go again.
You know, and you just want to give up. It's like a mean trick someone's playing on you, you know?
Yes. So this really is where the rubber meets the road, because this is against every expectation you were hoping for. And that tolerance just comes in, and it just is so important to take a breath and remember, the goal is progress. Progress. Stay in the game, not perfection. Nancy, build the rest here. The next one. And this is only possible if you are stay in action.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't happen if those unmet expectations swept you away. Whether you were slowing down with weight loss or actually gaining weight. But even if you get to this point, last build here, Nancy, those unmet expectations don't go away, do they, guys?
Yeah, no, it happens.
Nope, they'll never go away. That's the unfortunate reality of this. All of us, every single person listening, each of us here, you will always have unmet expectations.
And, you know, life happens.
That's
You
right.
know, let's say, you know, something happens and it triggers you to, you know, have a tough stretch and you gain weight. It's not just, oh, I've been in the box all week or two and I'm gaining weight. This is about, you know, things change, you have a tough stretch, your routine changed, the pandemic hits. I mean, there's so many reasons why you could have a period of like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
as an example, you know, a personal example to me, something that hits very close to home. I've talked to my mother about it many, many times. She was in HMR for years. She lost over 100 pounds and kept it off for 7 years. And then her father, who she's very, very close to, passed away. She had a very hard time in her personal life, stopped going to meetings, stopped doing a lot of the things that made her successful. And she says it to her own accord, and she knows I was going to share the story, so I'm not just throwing her under the bus. But she gained back what she lost and kept off for 7 years in 7 months, in 7 or 8 months. So it just goes to show, like, some of the most inspirational people to me in HMR, in my classes, are not just the people who have lost weight quick, but even more so the people who have lost weight, gained it back, found a way to just reset themselves. My mother's back on the program with me. She's lost over 100 pounds again. She's back at her goal weight,
Beautiful.
you know.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It is a learning process.
It is. It
It
is.
really is.
So
you know, you learn a lot about yourself during this also. I mean, it's a mental journey as well as a physical and food journey. You know, you learn what your triggers are and to tolerate what you can tolerate food wise too. You know, that's part of learning in phase 2 is what your body reacts to. You know, if I start doing a lot of grains, it just makes me want more grains. So it's one of those things that I personally have to limit. So that's part of the learning also, you know, is when you get into phase 2, you have to learn how your body reacts to certain foods. I'm more of a protein person. Proteins work really well with me, and of course the fruits and vegetables. But grains, I still shy away from the grains. It's kind of a trigger for me. So another learning process.
yeah, good that you know that, Shane, obviously, about yourself. Nancy, just build the rest of this and we'll just summarize this one.
Yeah.
So again, the goal here is progress, not perfection. And when you can really take that on, you know, packed right with that, you can't avoid it. You're going to have unmet expectations. Don't be surprised by them. Say, oh, this is one of those times. What do I need to do? I have to tolerate this because I have to stay in action. The goal is not perfection. It's to stay in action, continue to make progress. And this person who was Mr. or Mrs. Perfect, you could see it really was a series of beginning again, beginning again. Gina, you liked that term and the whole notion of you practiced it enough.
Yeah, I love that begin again muscle because that's what it's all about. You know, I look at that and I think at that point when she was gaining weight or he was gaining weight, if that person gave up in that moment, they would be giving up all the weight they had lost up to that point. So they had so much to protect, much to protect. So I think to also ask yourself, you know, if I give up in this moment, what will happen? You know, what's happened in the past? What's the history?
Yes.
But if I tolerate the feelings, if I work with my coach, if I stay in action, well, that chart shows you what's possible.
That's right.
And everyone's journey is a little different, obviously, because you know everyone's life is a little different. But I just think, remember you have so much to protect, and that's an important one, I think.
Great. Keep the
Great.
door open for ongoing progress. That's great.
Absolutely.
All right, so that's our first perspective. Nancy, let's bring up the second one. So on top of the goal being progress, not perfection, here's another one. I'm going to ask our audience, could you comment on this, please? We've talked about this before. Many of you watching, especially our regulars, have said this was such a useful insight to get, and that is that motivation follows action. So what does this mean for you personally? How does this show up in your life when you're tackling your own health habits? We all have our moments when we're not feeling motivated. And well, if you're going to wait for that motivation to come, you might find yourself waiting a long time. So we've proposed that you flip-flop these things, whatever it takes to get in action, and then you start to feel the motivation build. So the action actually precedes the motivation oftentimes. So to our audience, have you seen this happen for yourself? You didn't want to name the behavior. You engaged in the behavior and you found like, hey, all of a sudden now, unlike before I did the behavior, now I'm feeling more motivated. Now I'm feeling like I'm on a roll. Shane, what's your, when you hear this, I know this resonates for you from our previous discussion. Say some more about that.
In the beginning, I couldn't do the PA, but I could have done a little bit of PA.
Mhm.
But there were some circumstances that I just started, on my lunch break. I started walking, and I got results because I started walking more at lunchtime, and then started moving more outside of lunchtime at work. And it snowballed, and eventually I was able to start doing my own yard work again. I had to have somebody mow my grass because I couldn't do it at one point, but it was one of those things where a little action motivated me more to want to do more.
Yes.
Get outside, get the fresh air, go walk around and look at stuff instead of sitting at my desk or just, wandering around the office. So, I even sent Rick a video one time where I was out walking and talking to people about HMR while I was out walking and talking. So,
Yeah, I remember that.
Multitasking there.
Yes.
We've got a couple of comments that are great here. We've got Jennifer saying, one like for her, like that I'm going to start on Monday mindset, which never happens, right? You just need to do it now. And then Susan says, this one is true. You do an HMR thing, make a shake, track on the app, do PA, etc., and your mindset swells back up. That's great. And then I love your sister Leni says, walk out the door as you complain about going.
Complain nice and loud as you're walking.
Yeah.
That's great. I love it. Ava also gives it a thumbs up here. I see action begets motivation for sure. It leads to positive energy as opposed to negative energy. So powerful. Oh, that's great. Really great, Ava.
And here's Sharon, Sharon. I found by moving when I didn't want to, it helped me to be motivated in my PA and increased my PA. Again, moving when you don't feel like it.
Yeah, that's really great. You guys want to try that exercise we worked up and
Yes.
share this with our audience? So guys, a little speaking to everyone who's watching, get ready to type here your comments. Get a little exercise just to sort of really hammer this point, especially if anyone's watching and this is the first time you've heard this somewhat counterintuitive concept that motivation actually follows action. Some people might say that doesn't make sense. You got to be motivated to get in action. Well, that's not how it goes too often. So here we have this. So we picked physical activity. So as you're, I want you guys to start typing your answers here, but don't hit enter just yet. So on those times when you're not into it, you just don't feel like getting out the door or getting on the machine or going to the class, what are you saying to yourself? Or what are you feeling in that moment before you do the PA? Could be a single word, could be a phrase. So type that and then separate it from after you've done the exercise, what are you saying to yourself? Or how are you feeling? So take a minute and give people time. What are you saying before the PA during those times when you just don't want to get out the door? And then how do you feel after? Okay, feel free to hit enter once you've typed that up. Guys, help me with the feed here.
I'm going to take this down so we can.
Yeah, that's great. It's tough to see them. Yeah, great. So, by the way, Gina, does this resonate with you?
Oh my gosh, I have to tell you that this morning, just this very morning, and it feels so long ago now, my alarm went off at 5:20.
Yeah.
And I did not want to get out of bed. It went off at 5:20 so I could go to the gym.
Mm.
And I was debating back and forth, that ping pong ball conversation. I'm too tired. It's a long day. Just go back to sleep. You can take the day off. And I just, I got in action and I got dressed and I went and I'm complaining the whole way there. And when I was done, I was glad I went.
Of course, of course.
I was no longer complaining.
We
Very
laughed
happy.
earlier this week. We laughed, right? Gina, you can say this about any positive behavior. Like it's the rare person that looks back and says, "Gee, I wish I hadn't done that exercise."
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I
Right?
didn't. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like Sherry's comment. I'm tired. I feel poopy. I feel great, energized.
Right.
I love that.
That's very
And
good.
Joy said
Perfect.
sluggish versus energized.
Right.
Yeah.
Susan Thomas, I didn't know if I could. I did it and I feel great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, good. That's a good
That's
one.
another good one.
So where does motivation live on that little formula? If you're waiting for it on the left side, you're going to be waiting a while.
Right.
You get into action, even if it's just a little bit, guys, right? Oshin, you've said this. How many
Yeah.
times have you said this in our discussions?
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'd say Gina has told us a lot of what I call genius things in class, and this was definitely one of the more genius things that she's had to class. It really resonated with me because there's a very positive silver lining. Just like the negative thoughts snowball, so do the positive actions, right? Like I tell people all the time. For me, I started staying in the box, then all of a sudden eventually I started tracking my food. When I started tracking my food, I started drinking more water. When I started drinking more water, I slowly started doing PA. When I started doing PA, I quit smoking. Like all of these things don't happen all together by accident. It's a ripple effect. Good behaviors snowball into more good behaviors, just like bad thoughts and bad behaviors snowball into more bad thoughts and bad behaviors. It goes both ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a really good point.
So if you look at that moment, so whatever the behaviors, gee, I don't want to have another food from in the box, or I don't want to exercise or whatever. Let's break that down a little bit more, specific into the actual best practices that can actually get you moving in that direction of the positive behavior. Remember, progress, not perfection. So Shane, you just said it. It doesn't have to be a 5-mile walk. It could be a 5-minute walk. So first, and Shane, I'll ask you to comment, but a broad thing is focus on the to-dos, not the not to-dos. So for those of you HMR veterans, you don't just sit there and say, I'm going to not eat the cake. I'm going to not eat the cookies. I'm going to not eat the chips. Ultimately, that may be the goal, but you want to focus on what you are going to do and break it down to as small as it needs to be. So Shane, what did you figure out on this whole philosophy?
Going to class was the biggest thing, making that a priority, making myself a priority for that hour and a half every week, driving over to the milestone and participating in the class. There were times I didn't want to go, but the times that I didn't want to go, I needed the class more than I thought I did. And then there were times where the class needed me. I don't know, in a way, when you have a good week, you bring other people up, and that's what we're all here to do, is uplift each other.
Yep.
So, it's sometimes the class needs you, sometimes you need the class. And there were plenty of times when I needed the class.
Yeah.
And that really, it reset me for the week.
So not feeling motivated, you'd go to the class and then things opened up.
Right. So the action I took was going to the class, and then more action happened after the class. I felt better. I stayed more focused. So yeah, that was one of the big things for me initially in the beginning, not skipping classes.
Nancy, we liked Sandy's strategy, fellow health coach Sandy. she said in our prep meeting earlier in the week, she asks herself when she's just not feeling the mojo, okay, just I don't want to do anything. What is the absolute easiest, simplest, positive thing that I could do next? She keeps it that short-sighted, just the next easiest, simplest thing. And then in an email, I asked her, like, so what are your things? And she wrote back, she said, the first thing I do is I do an HMR mirror replacement, which sets a tone. And if you do it earlier in the day, it can set a tone for the whole day. But then she also says, I really make sure it's one that is among my favorites. May seem obvious, but when you're sitting there waiting for motivation, you're not thinking this way. So a mirror replacement, one she loves. And then also she also commented that, similar to what we said earlier, record keeping and tracking your progress throughout the day is something she can do. And she finds that gets the day back on track as well. What else, guys? Anything else you'd say about that shifting into action to ultimately get the motivation?
I think that's one of the advantages of the HMR program. Sorry, Gina, but the fact that we have to do's to do. So I mean, it doesn't even have to be a mystery. It's like, okay, I can do an HMR meal, food. I can do lots of fruits and vegetables. I can do PA. I mean, 1 of 3, 2 or 3, but it just you don't have to like, what should I do next? It's not a mystery, which is nice, I think.
Just like what Nancy's saying, Oshin alluded to this earlier. He did 1 or 2 things correctly that led to more success by doing more things correctly. So, if you're having a struggle out there, like many of us have done, go back to your journaling maybe first. Make sure you're actually journaling everything that you're intaking in a week. And then compare that to the previous week where you didn't do it, and you might find that you have more success this week by actually tracking and being conscious of what you're having instead of just kind of, well, I probably had this, So try to do one thing. We talked about baby steps a little bit, do one thing correctly, just like Oshin was saying, and that led to more success down the road.
That keeps a solid foundation, and at every stage of your success or failures, you're gonna have to reset that in your brain and reiterate that to yourself. Because for me, like lately, I've been really doing well on PA, right? So I want to step my game up, and I want to try to do some running. So I talked to my wife's cousin, who's an avid runner, who's been running for like 20 years. And I'm like, I got my sneakers. I found them online. I'm going to start trying to do 6 or 7 miles a day. And he's like, whoa. He's like, you've never ran in your life. He was like, you need a baseline. I want you for the next month to try to run for 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes consecutively in a day. And if you hear that, you're like, oh, 5 minutes, what, like, why can't I run 5 minutes? But I was like, what if I can do 10 the next day? He's like, no, I don't want you to. 5 minutes. Every day consistently, because it's a baseline, and it's important to have something to build off of no matter what you're doing, no matter what stage. And to Shane's point, if you have a blip in the road, you can look back and say, well, I really know how to do that 5 minutes really well.
Yep. I've heard that same strategy with push-ups. 1 push-up.
Yeah.
One. Just one. Do what? 7 days in a row, do 1 push-up. And it's opened up doors for people. It's amazing how that works. All right. Gina, go ahead.
I know we're strapped for time, but one thing I've done, and I often coach people to do, is especially for being in the box when they're struggling, if we're on the call, I'll say, you know what, just go make a shake right now. Just go make a shake right now. When in doubt, shake it out. I always say that. When in doubt, shake it out. And that one action, just that one shake, can make such a difference, because the motivation follows that one shake, and that can make the difference in the day. So that's an example too of that. So
that could be, personally for me, guys, that could be my biggest game changer. The easiest, simplest thing. If I make a shake, everything changes for me. It's so powerful. It's amazing. It's a great example.
Mm-hmm.
So not feeling motivated, remember that action precedes motivation in most cases, and ask yourself, what is the easiest, simplest to-do thing that I can do that's successful in the next 5 minutes? That's the question to ask. And again, back to, I said there was overlap in these things. The goal is progress here, not perfection. What's the next simplest, easiest thing you can do?
Yeah.
All right. Well, this brings us to our third and final perspective that we hope is helpful. We're talking again about when things aren't going so well, with your weight, with your health habits, maybe with your health? What are some perspectives that can help keep you going? And our final perspective, Nancy, if you could put this up. It's very much related to that weight chart we saw, guys. Staying in the game is the game. There's no finish line. So to our audience, give you some time here. What do you say to yourself that helps you to not give up? I want to ask this a few times. I want to populate our comments with, what do you say to yourself that helps you to not give up? So guys, just as people are thinking about that and writing, staying in the game is the game. Shane, what else would you say about that? Because we all agree this is true. This is a truism on the most basic level.
Oh, absolutely. I adapted the mantra very early on in phase one that it was one day at a time.
I remember
one
that.
day at a time.
Yeah.
And I had planned for a week, with my supplies, but today I'm going to do today. I've got my shakes, I've got my entree, I've got my vegetables, I'm going to do my walking. That's my day. Kind of everything else was blurry as far as food choices. Okay. So I put blinders on almost. I could still smell commercials when they came on, but I really put on blinders for the food, and I didn't have to think about it that way.
Yeah.
But it was just one day at a time. And
Yep.
when I was brushing my teeth at night to go to bed, I could look in the mirror and say, "You did a good job today." One day at a time is all I did.
It's great. It's great. It's a beautiful mantra. It channels a lot of what we've talked about here tonight. Any comment? Please feel free to represent anyone's comments about what they say to themselves to help them not give up. Gino, as we're looking at that, what say you about this staying in the game is the game idea?
Yeah, I again, just to echo what everyone's been saying, I mean, what would happen if you didn't stay in the game? What is the alternative to that? I think with history, people would find themselves repeating that, and we're trying to sort of rewrite the history, recreate the history in a sense. And Sherry says, "Where would I be without HMR?" And I've been here before, so I know I can do it again.
That's Jennifer. That's a good one. And that is so true, Jennifer, many times as we've shared in this space.
Karen from our native class said, I think about what I'm protecting, and I think that's important too. For me personally, I had a list of stuff when I wanted to start this weight loss process, and it was a list of 10 things that I was ashamed that I couldn't do. Put on my socks without feeling like physically in pain, walking up a flight of steps and not being out of breath, being able to play with my son honestly and having the energy to do so. Every picture of me with my kid when he was a year old was me on a couch and him on the floor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now you can't pick me up off the floor from my kid. So whenever I have a hard day, I look at that list, and it's easy to just see all the things that you're protecting as well as all the things that you've progressed from, and it puts perspective back on the table.
Shane, the usually very reserved and sometimes sullen Sharon White, not said, "Why would I risk this terrific life I'm enjoying?" Way to go, Sharon.
That's great. John says,
Awesome,
"Yep,
John.
you have accomplished so much, you just can't give up." Ava, another person from Natick who's been so successful. We've had her on. I remember my why, and is what I am doing, supporting that.
Yep.
In Ava, we trust.
Yeah.
Suzanne is resonating what Oshin was saying. I think of the things I can do now that I couldn't do before. And with my daughter as well, there was no way in the world I could get in a go-kart or a roller coaster with her. And now we can do those fun things together.
Yeah.
I would have to take multiple breaks walking through the zoo if we went to the zoo. And now we can go all day. It just, quality of life is so much better on this side of it, but it was a journey. Make no mistake about that. It was a journey to get here where I'm at currently. So,
and just what I'll say, having been doing this for a long time, I'm the same way. It's like I don't ever want to go back to the way I felt at one time, and that really drives me. But it's not like it ends, right? I mean, you still 30, 40 years later, you still need to plan.
Mhm.
You still need to think, what are we going to have to eat today? When am I going to get my exercise in? We're going away for the weekend. What do I need? I mean, it just it gets easier, but you can't let your guard down.
And Nancy, just share for the community, not everyone is familiar with your history, because some people are newer to the community. Just real quick, how much weight you're down and for how long?
So I lost 60 pounds about, well, let me see, so it's been about 40 years now.
Yeah.
So,
Extraordinary.
but that was again, after many, my first diet, I was 10. So it was a long, long time. And I have to say, it's interesting, the story about your mom, Oisin. I kept all my weight off for about 6 or 7 years. And then I started dating. I was going out more. I was not as structured as I was. And I was slowly starting to gain some weight. And then I found HMR. I got hired and started, doing the role modeling in the HMR program. And it just saved my life. So it's like, I probably was, I was gaining some weight back. And then, it's made it so much better.
Yeah,
to
I
be
mean,
with HMR.
I think when people hear this is a forever thing, they think, "Oh, what do you mean? Am I in phase one forever?" No, that's
No.
not necessarily what it means. But what it does mean is like diet. Sometimes people think of diet as like a finite end date type of
Right.
thing. I get to this point and I'm done. I got the answers to the test, but
Right.
that's not how any of this works. Like the commercial, right? I mean, this is a constant work in progress.
And that I loved Melissa had mentioned that, when she said, we think that, oh, once you've lost the weight, it's all done. You're there. And you're not, unfortunately. And it is a lifetime thing, but the rewards are great.
That's right. Last comment here. Jeanette said, Bob Garrison, let that baggage go and move forward, handsome. The best is yet to come. I think that's a good one to end it on, guys. I'm gonna have us turn the corner here. Nancy, why don't you put the PowerPoint up? We're gonna just have these perspectives up one more time. Again, there are more perspectives that are empowering beyond what we've targeted here. We hope this has been helpful for all of you watching. Again, number one, the goal is progress, not perfection. Catch yourself when you're being tough on yourself and learn to tolerate those unmet expectations. The second counterintuitive idea, but so true, motivation follows action much more often than sitting there and the motivation just comes. So even little steps can move you towards being more motivated, but the action has to be where you start with that. And then finally, the more broad, staying in the game is the game. Stay in action, and the doors to ongoing progress and success stay open. So if there was a perspective that resonated with you, great, use it when you need it. And I think our discussion earlier, guys, we said we wanted to end in a certain way. We made a point, and I just said it in the first half of the discussion, and we'd like to end on this point, because without this perspective, all these other perspectives that we've shared are much harder to access, let alone use. And that point is, be kind to yourself. Once again, notice when you're judging yourself and let it go. Coincidentally, Nancy, this was put up in a meeting that we had this week at HMR. Could you read the quote, please?
Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, always.
Such a great quote, one that we all, us five, we wanted to end on. It's very inspiring when you think about how it relates to your interactions with others. But what we would propose is take the message in that quote and turn it to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Treat yourself as you would that child that you love. It only helps you to keep going, because the self-judging is not productive. It's not useful, and often stops the progress dead in its tracks. So you're all working so hard. There are times when it's going to go well. There are times when it's not going to go well. That's been the topic tonight. And we hope that this has been a useful conversation as we all continue our journeys towards continuing to practice a healthy lifestyle. So guys, it's been a blast. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you,
having me.
everybody. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And to all of you in the audience, thanks for joining us. We'll see you
Yes.
next week.
Good night, everyone.
Good
night,
night, everybody.
Everyone.
That-